Dirt roads to rock crawling, two-buck chuck to screaming eagle, moonshine to 50-year-old single malt. We talk about it all here on Wheelin' Wine and Whiskey with your hosts, Jason and Chris.
Welcome to the Wheelin' Wine and Whiskey Podcast, episode 274. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Great time up at Meadow Lake and back to reality. But here we are. We're making it happen.
It's been a whirlwind, and I say wind.
Yeah, wind. It was windy. We got a couple wind events. You missed the first one, and it wasn't as bad as the one that we experienced at the end of our trip.
Yeah.
But that's the Sierras for you, and it's still beautiful up here. And we got the Lance life.
Absolutely. No, it's I'd hate to be living in a tent right now. That's for sure.
Yeah,
so.
Tent's not good.
I know that the campground for the last weekend we were up here filled up, super packed. It wasn't like probably a Sierra Trek full, but a lot of people showed up to recreate this weekend. That's for sure.
Yep, busy weekends up at Meadow Lake, but all good. So this episode we got to sit down. I got to sit down. You weren't quite here yet.
No, I hadn't arrived yet.
But got to sit down, and this has been like 2 years in the making.
I know, right?
Our good friend Danny Jones of Wet Willy Fab.
Yep.
You know Danny if you've been out doing some hardcore trails, the Hammers, Fordyce, Rubicon, done anything at WFO in the past. Danny has been around for a while, even in the short years that he's been on this earth, young compared to us.
Right.
But he's got the Willys pickup. Distinguished.
It's a unique rig.
Very unique rig, and it's got the LS just singing the American Eagle songs there with all the woo pows.
It's built.
Yeah. So, I've known Danny for a while, and, we said, hey, we got to, you got Wet Willy Fab. We got to promote it on the podcast, and friend of the podcast here. So, finally got to sit down with Danny before he left.
I'm sad
on
I
Sunday.
missed it. I missed it.
And he's got great stories. Him and his dad, they got a lot of great stories.
Oh,
but,
yeah. I know his dad. Yep.
Good family. They got the Christmas tree farm in Forest Hill.
That's right.
That's what they're doing as well. So, and Danny just moved out of the Christmas tree farm here the last year and got a place down the street, a nice shop that he talks about.
Good.
And he's enjoying it and he's busy.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. So good stuff. So you want to dive into this one?
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
All right. All right, Meadow Lake 2024. I'm here once again with another guest. Guest of the podcast we've been wanting to get on for 2 years, I think now.
2, 3, yeah. Since we were in the Springs a couple years ago. And it rained on us.
But we're making it happen now. Danny, how you doing, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Doing good.
Danny Jones of Wet Willy Fab.
Yep.
So we've known each other for quite a while, seeing each other on random spots of trails at Hammers and stuff. And
yep.
Hey, there's Danny. Hey, there's Jason. So anyways, great to get you on here this morning. Another beautiful day in paradise.
I actually think the first time we met was up at Sierra Trek the year you guys stayed at the cabin at Cisco with us.
Oh, you know what? You're probably right. And that was like 7 years ago.
You were still in the CJ.
I was still in the CJ. It was pre-buggy days. That's right. Yeah. Pre-buggy days. And that was the last time I ran the whole trail with the organized Trek event.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I've been doing Thursday drag for the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, you're asking for punishment there.
Yeah, but it's it's good PR for the business.
Absolutely.
And it's fun. I drag a lot of people out of the trail. So Thursday we left main camp at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
All the way down to 1 by like 9 o'clock because we had to get in front of the river run. We had 9 of us.
Okay.
Me and Team Shit Show went down there.
Yeah.
And we're hanging out at 1 and having breakfast. And I've been eating those peak meals lately.
Peak meals.
Have you tried those?
Are those
the
MRE
vacuum
type shit?
I have
hot water?
Yeah, I have not had a bad one.
So they're like Mountain House.
Exactly. They're better.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. Have you had the Mountain House meals?
I have.
And so you like the Peak better?
Much better.
Okay, interesting. You
so
get those online or?
Yeah, Bass Pro Shop.
Okay.
Amazon.
Okay.
You buy them they have like a base camp bucket. And it ends up being, they're about $8 a meal.
Oh, shit. That's not bad.
So I was at Winchell 1 having biscuits and gravy.
And it tastes good.
It tastes good.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So we're hanging out there, and the main group finally comes up, and a couple other groups come through, and we hear, oh, we got a, of course, the first time you hear something over the radio, we got a broken driveline on a Jeep. It's like, okay, what kind of Jeep? What kind of driveline? So we waited for the group to go by. We called Axle Alley. You remember we fixed the mud hole a couple years ago? So right up from that, guy in a Jeep Commando, 1350 rear driveline, CV pin broke.
Oh, no.
And guy was from Dutch Flat, local guy.
Okay.
Drove it up here.
Oh, yeah.
And it just had been worn out. We started taking it apart. You could smell how hot it was.
Gee.
So I'm like, okay. Warren and my dad are with me. We take the CV off the driveline. We cut the ears. I had a companion flange. We put a knee joint in. Put it all back together, and it only had like a half-inch of engagement. I'm like, this thing's going to fall out of here. So we turned around. We drug them all the way back to the staging area at Eagle Lakes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And it was... from about sunrise down, he drove the rest of the way in front-wheel drive.
Okay.
But it's one of those, I don't like leaving people.
No, right.
So we got him there. He's like, my wife's on the way with the trailer. I'm like, perfect. So we turned around and left Eagle Lakes at 3:30.
In the afternoon.
Caught back to Chris Colliard.
Who was broken.
He was fixed at this point. We still caught him at windshield 3. And then we got up to the top about 8 o'clock. So 13 hours down and back.
Yeah. And
Not a
lots
bad
of
day.
wheeling you got in.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, I haven't ran the whole trail yet this year. I've only, because the river's been so high.
Yeah.
I've either came in from Meadow and gone down to Committee, or came into the first river crossing in and out a couple different times.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was nice to finally do.
It is. I mean, it's my favorite trail. I think it's your favorite trail.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's my favorite close trail.
Favorite close trail.
Right. Because I love going to the Hammers.
Yeah.
The wheeling down there is just.
Well, it is. It's different.
Exactly.
It's just like going to San Hollow. It's different.
Yeah. And down there, you can run the same trail one day and run it the next day, and it's different.
Sure.
So, here the lines are basically the same. Stuff moves around a little bit here and there,
Right.
but, I grew up on this trail. So, Sierra Trek, the first one I did was 97.
97.
And I was born in 92.
Yeah, that's pretty
So,
good.
I've been up here.
So
my
I was
whole
doing
life.
it 2 years before you were born.
So my
in 90.
dad's first was the 95. The 95.
That's great. So, so what is your favorite trail of all time? You got one trail left to wheel before you die. What are you doing?
I would be up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I'd be up here.
Just got a lot of memories. It's this cool freaking trail.
Yeah. And it's even we come up here. This year was the first year I wasn't one of the first people to Meadow in the snow.
Oh, right.
You were usually the first people up here. But
Yeah.
this year, I broke a lot of stuff at Hammers, and the truck got a full rebuild. Well, the front end did. So
you and Horton battle it out.
Yep,
Horton,
exactly.
right? Yeah. So, and he just did a lot of work to his rig. It's still a Toyota, but no. I can't give a shit. So
they're all pieces of junk. It just depends on which one you want to work on.
Well, and that's what I love when Shannon says, "Yeah, I got to fix my junk," and he's got this $500,000 race car, and he's calling it junk, but that's what it is. You know, it's funny. So let's back up a little bit. Okay, so you just kind of alluded you got into four-wheeling with your family, your dad taking you out here at the young age of 4 or 5 years old.
Yep.
So you grew up in the sport.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about some of the rigs you've had over the years.
So, my Willys pickup that I have currently, my red truck, my dad bought me when I was 8. We pulled it out.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we pulled it out of a apple orchard in Ripon.
Okay.
So there was a guy that used to be the Mad Hatters, Shane Hutchings, and Shane had a teal flat fender.
Okay.
And he was one of those guys that there was never anything out of place on the Jeep.
Really?
He would scratch it, and it would go home and get the side of the Jeep repainted in the garage by himself.
Oh, no kidding.
He was one of those.
Meticulous.
His dad, Hutch, wheeled a F-head flat fender, so
Okay.
Ford.
Yeah.
The Ford factory bolts have Fs on them. Every F was hand-painted red. And these guys, they wheeled. They, Ford Ice, Rubicon, Doozy, they drove their flat fenders everywhere. So Shane had a Willys pickup.
Okay.
And it was orange, it was beautiful, and I was a little kid, and it was, one of the coolest trucks I'd ever seen.
Yeah, you're like, this is a badass truck.
So my dad told Shane, he goes, "Hey, Danny, I'd like to build one of those for Danny if you ever find one." So Shane lived in Ripon, down this truck. So my dad, wakes me up one Saturday. He goes, "Come on, we're going to go get you a truck." I'm like, "Okay, let's go." So we drove to Ripon. It was in the family, the guy who owned it had passed away. It was his sister was selling it. The guy's name was Danny that
No
had the
shit.
truck, and
Oh,
he had
how
had
funny.
it for like 40-something years. It had like a Ford Slant 6 put in it. Still had the original 3-speed. It was on stock axles, spring under. We got it home.
It ran.
No.
Oh, it didn't
That
run.
was no head was off of it.
Oh,
Motor
okay,
was
okay.
seized up.
All right.
I think he paid somewhere $1,500 for
Whatever,
it.
yeah.
We brought it home, took it all apart, and that's the truck I learned to grind and weld. And the first thing my dad had me do, we pulled the front clip off, and he goes, "Here's a Vial wheel on the die grinder. Go
Yep.
ahead and clean the whole frame."
Yep.
And we
That's
started there.
Good times.
And my dad didn't have a bunch of money, so it was always, oh, this buddy's got, old wore out 350
Sure.
Chevy. He bought a 79 Chevy with a 465 205 and a 12 bolt, and we put a Wagoneer 44 in the front and spring over on 35s, which back then I was in high school, spring
Yeah.
over 35s.
Yeah, hell yeah.
The first time I ever wheeled it, I was 15 and a half.
Okay.
I had my permit. We left from Forest Hill. We drove to Deer Valley. We did all of Deer Valley. We camped in the middle.
Sweet.
We woke up. We left Friday, ran the whole trail. Saturday morning, we woke up, and it was 28 degrees.
Yeehaw.
And my dad and one of his buddies were talking about building a hot tub out of the fire with, some kind of convection.
Yeah.
And he goes, I know where some hot springs are. So we left from there. We drove to Barney Riley.
Okay, Barney Riley Trail.
Stayed at Barney Riley for the night.
Sweet.
We woke up. We drove into Nevada. We drove all the way up 50, all the way home. There was an accident, so we came through the town of Iowa Hill, dirt road. So we did something close to 300 miles
You
the
put
first
some
time.
crazy miles
The
on that
first time it
weekend.
ever went out.
That's awesome.
So
And
that's
no
how
issues?
Nope, no issue. I mean,
Minor stuff.
little stuff.
New car blues.
Yeah, but nothing crazy. 'Cause I wheeled that truck since I'm 32 now, so 17 years.
So what year is the
To 51.
51? Okay.
Sheet metal and
yeah.
part of the frame.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of other different things
It's
going
all
on. So.
it's Chevy stuff mostly.
So let's. That's cool. I didn't know the history behind it. I thought you've only had it for a few years. I mean, I've always known you with it, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think you had it that far back as a kid. That's super cool. So it's got that sentimental value. It's
it's
just
like
like
your like
my
your
5.
CD,
Yeah. So funny when you mentioned, it's the same thing with growing up and doing our thing. My dad would, knew a bunch of people, and it's like, hey, I know a guy with 5 V8 sitting on the garage floor here, at this auto body shop. So we went over there one night, and the guy's like, yeah, pick out an engine. Any of them are yours. They all need something. And my dad goes, you want that 327 right there? He goes, I remember that and that street rod, and they used to race in Fremont at Baylands Raceway, and he goes, that's a good motor. So we got it. I didn't do shit to the bottom end. Took the heads off it, cleaned it up, bolted it back together, new gaskets, sealed everything up, and that fucker ran for years. I just replaced it a few years ago.
Mine was not that way. Mine came from one of my dad's longtime friends. He said, hey, I got this motor sitting on the side of my shop. It came out of a 350 pickup. There's a 350 Chevy, came out of a pickup. He goes, it ran when we pulled it out. It's been sitting there for 5 years.
Yeah.
So we go and pick it up, and, he didn't ever have any kids. Greg.
Yeah,
Osborne.
Greg. Yeah. Oh, yeah, great guy.
So Greg doesn't have any kids, so I'm kind of his kid.
Yeah. He adopted
So
you.
we took it home. It was on one of those Home Depot carts. My dad built a little stand. It was seized.
Uh-huh.
We filled the cylinders full of WD-40 and ATF and, mystery oil. And
Anything, yeah.
for like 2
Mechanic in a
weeks,
can.
start rocking it back and forth. And then we finally got it where it broke free.
No kidding.
And that motor was a 3-stroke. You had to every time you filled it up with gas, you had to fill it up with oil at the same time. But I was also, 15, 16 years old. My dad's like,
Sure.
you don't need a bunch of horsepower.
No.
So I ran that, and then
You definitely don't need a lot of horsepower.
I ran that, and then it got to the point where it was so smoky he didn't want to follow me on the trail anymore.
Yeah, I bet.
So I think it was when I graduated high school.
Okay.
My graduation present from my parents, they bought me a GM Performance,
Nice.
350 crate motor.
Nice.
And then that's since gone, and
Yeah.
5.3 and tune port for a long time.
Yeah.
So I had a 72 Chevy pickup, 3/4 ton, 4-wheel drive, 4-speed, had 37s on it, and that's what I towed with every weekend.
Okay.
So I towed with the 72 Chevy, towed the 51 Willys, Ford Ice, Rubicon.
Yeah, you were bougie. You had a trailer and
right?
truck and everything. Yeah.
So, granted, to go to Rubicon from Forest Hill, I would have to fill up. It had the 18-gallon tank behind the seat.
Okay.
I'd have to fill up in Forest Hill, fill up in Georgetown, go to the Rubicon, fill up in Georgetown to make it back to Forest Hill. I'd have to fill up in Forest Hill so I could go back to work on Monday.
Right.
But, so I was towing with that truck. The motor was worn out. So I'm like, okay, Took the crate in a weekend. I took the crate motor out of the Willys, put it in the 72 Chevy, put a Tuneport 350 in the Willys.
Okay.
That I wanted fuel injection.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, Tuneport. Well, it was an 86 IROC Camaro motor, so it wasn't anything special.
Yeah.
It was a 1-year only motor. It was like the first generation of it.
Uh-huh.
And it had a mass airflow sensor module box.
Okay.
That went bad.
Oh.
So it ran in limp mode for 3 or 4 seasons, but it always ran.
Uh-huh.
It was never a powerhouse.
Okay.
It got to the point where if I revved it up above $4,000, it would blow all the belts off the motor.
Oh, really?
If you sat there in neutral with the motor warm, it would knock, and you push the clutch in, and the knock would go away. You could grab the thrust bearings were gone. You could grab the crank.
Yeah.
So, and I tried for the last season and a half. I tried to kill it. I'd be coming out of Fordyce Lake, the motor would be at 280. It would not die.
Jesus.
So I finally took it out. I sold it to a guy, and then that's when I put the 5.3 in.
Lightly used.
Yeah.
IROC motor.
It came with a mullet.
Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, then actually we were coming out one 4th of July, and it's Monday. We're all hungover. I'm driving out the dirt road, and it was still leaf spring. It had the 60-14 bolt. It was on 42s. I'm driving out, and I'm like, man, this thing's got a broken front leaf spring or something.
Okay.
So I got out on the dirt road, and I looked around, and I'm like,
Yeah.
fucking leaf springs are okay. All right, so let's drive it back. Drove it to the cabin, put it on the trailer, and I tightened the front binder, and the truck got longer. I'm like,
Whoopsie.
so I climbed underneath it, the
Frame.
driver's side frame rail, basically right where it humps up. It broke all the way through. My sliders were on either side of it, so that was holding together. So I'm like, okay, this thing's broken. So I put it in the garage, took the front clip off, started looking at it. The passenger side frame was broken halfway through. The bell housing was broken all the way across the top.
Oh, my God.
So I'm like, my dad comes out, he's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to cut the front of the frame off and start over.
Right.
So that's when I cut the frame off the firewall, tube the whole front of it out, put the 5.3 in it, put the MB 4500 in it, and linked the front.
And how long ago was that?
8 years.
8 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, so that's like right when I first started working at WFO.
Okay.
Because while it was down, Trevor was like, well, we're going to Jamboree and you need to go, so go get my Land Cruiser buggy. I'm like, okay. And he goes, I need some stuff. He goes, just, I'll pay for the parts. You do the work, you can wheel it. I'm like, okay, cool. So it needed little stuff. It didn't have a stereo in it, and
because you need that for wheeling.
right? I had to pull the front shocks off, and both front coilovers were leaking, so we had to do that. And it had an old POS RAM. I don't even know if you ever heard of them.
POS?
POS, that was the company. They're not around anymore.
I don't remember. I remember Redneck Ram, PSC, of course.
I don't know where
but
Trevor found this, but it's Trevor.
And POS, yeah.
First trip out, Ram starts pissing hydraulic fluid everywhere.
Oh, great.
We had to fix that. But so I wheeled that thing for like a season and a half. Trevor calls me one night. He's like, hey, I got to pay the insurance on it. I need to know the mileage on the buggy. I'm like, okay. I go down and tell him. He goes, you put 548 miles on that thing in a year. He goes, where have you been going? I'm like, well, the wheel's really good.
Yeah. We've been having fun.
So I wheeled that for a while. Gave that back to him once my truck was done. My dad and I have always wheeled, but we've always, to do a big project like front half my truck, it takes a while.
Sure.
So it took me a year.
Yeah.
And I don't like doing stuff like that fast. I like to take my time, lay everything out, and I can take almost my whole truck apart with a 3/8 impact gun.
Really?
Yeah. Because I hate when stuff's a pain in the ass to work
Yeah,
with.
sure.
Because people are like, oh, you're a mechanic. It's like, no, I like to fabricate. I don't like being a mechanic. So when I got to do mechanic stuff, I try and make it as easy as I can.
Right.
My dad's Jeep, his CJ5, I think we were linking the back of it. We cut the frame off and all that stuff. And he's like, well, I need something to wheel in the meantime. So we found an 85 Toyota pickup that was on Toyota axles.
Yeah.
The yellow truck.
Yeah. It's a cool truck.
Put a bed on it.
For Toyota.
Yeah, exactly. Put a bed on it, exo caged it. He wheeled the crap out of it for, he probably wheeled it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And then it was before I linked the front on the Willys. The body was still in really good shape. And I'm like, I'm going to beat this thing up. All my buddies have Toyotas. I'm like, I want somebody to just go smash the shit out of it and not feel bad. So I took the Toyotas. I was working at Off-Road Addiction. I took it down there. I took the Toyota axles out. I sold them for enough to pay for a 60 and a 70.
Oh, wow.
I had 42s off the Willys, so I put those on there. I cut the exo cage. Half of it was gas pipe. Half of it was DOM. It probably had almost 200 feet of tubing in it.
No kidding.
So I cut everything off, recaged the whole thing. I took it out 9 trips and broke 7 front leaf springs because I was running Toyota rears.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I sold it to a guy. He had an extra cab truck that was on Toyota axles, so he wanted it for the axles. So I don't know, probably 3-4 years later, I had ran into one of his buddies, and he said, hey, your Toyota's still sitting in his yard, just no axles in it. I'm like, really? So I called the guy up. I'm like, hey, what's up with the... I had another buddy that was putting his truck on 1 ton, so I had a set of Toyota axles for a good deal. I'm like, I'm just going to put axles in anything, sell it, make a couple bucks. Drug it home. You know, I skidded it up on the trailer.
Yeah.
It still had the 22RE in it, the 5-speed dual cases, had the light bar in the front still, the winch, toolbox. Like, it just needed axles. So, get to Dad's house, get it in the garage, and my sister comes over, and she goes, oh, I really missed this truck. I really liked it. I'm like, okay, what are you getting at? She's like, well, how much did you pay for it? I'm like, I bought it back for $2,000. She goes, well, if I give you $2,000, will you put... Her husband had a 60 front axle sitting there. We found a 70 rear.
Okay.
I had a set of 42s for a good deal. She's like, well, will you put it together for me? And of course, it's my sister, so I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
So we did that. Right. And then that thing's been together. It's been the rental rig several times.
Yeah.
She has 2 kids since then. It's a standard cab, so she doesn't go out much. So it's one of my buddies' rigs is broken, or I have somebody coming in from out of town. It's like, well, just take the Toyota.
Nice to have a rental.
Yeah, exactly. So that's about... I've built a lot of other stuff over the years and never finished it.
Yeah.
I had a CJ6 for a long time I was building.
Really?
And I started building it as a high school project. I had the rear linked, front was leaf sprung. It was on 1 tons. And I broke the 241 transfer case in my Willys and needed an Atlas. So I sold it to pay for my Atlas. Yeah. I built I don't know if you ever met my buddy Doug. He's got another Willys pickup. It's silver.
Okay.
When I worked at Off-Road Addiction, we built full tube chassis buggies and all that kind of stuff. That's where I got my love for fabrication.
Okay.
Was from Dylan. And I wanted to, we were building race cars all the time. I wanted a race car.
Sure.
So I took a Willys pickup cab, hood and grill, and basically built a Ultra 4 car out of it.
Okay.
Single shock front, trailing arm bypasses rear, 5.3, turbo 400, 203, 205 doubler, and I got it into a full roller. And then I enjoy doing fabricating. I don't like doing the rest of the stuff to make something run.
Oh, you don't like all the plumbing and electrical and stuff?
No.
See, and I like that part. I like fabbing. I'm not as good at it as I'd like to be, but I don't know why. I love plumbing and electrical.
It's the tedious part of it.
It's very tedious.
And every time I do wiring, I lay it all out. I get it all done, and it's like, if I would have done this or I would have done that, I would have done this. So Doug's one of my good friends. We went to high school together. I bought the Willys pickup cab from him. He comes over. He's like, hey, that thing's been sitting underneath that carport for a year. You haven't done anything with it. What do you want for it? And I'm like, are you going to finish it? He goes, yes. I go, okay. And he works for me now, and he does all my wiring and plumbing stuff. He works for WFO too. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't even remember what. I'm like, give me like $10,000 for it. And he goes, well, I don't have that money. I'm like, well, make me payments. Yeah, so it took him a year and a half. So I never really ended up with any, substantial money, but it was, I didn't have a rack. He had a rack at his house. It's like, I need to do a clutch in my truck or one of those things.
Sure.
He since has put it all together, wheels it, drives it everywhere.
Cool.
Full tube chassis, Ultra 4 car from Forest Hill, drives Soda Springs.
It's registered in Mexico or something?
No, it's a 48 Jeep. What's the nice thing about the old stuff is they still have license plates.
Exactly.
Drives it up here, runs all forward ice, doesn't air down, drives it all the way home, drives it all the way to the Rubicon, wheels trail. But
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's one that I told him when I sold it to him, I get first right of refusal.
Yeah, that's one of those
when you're ready to get rid of it.
I'll sell it to you, but if you ever sell it, let me know. Yeah.
And I told him, it's like, I'm not going to have the money you want right away, so you're going to have to wait. He's like, okay.
Right. But that's cool. So you mentioned working for WFO, and then what was the other place before that?
Off-Road Addiction.
Off-Road Addiction. Are they still around? Yeah, I was going to say they.
No, so I've always built stuff in the garage at Dad's house and whatnot. When I was 18, I had graduated high school, and I was just kind of being a bum. My dad's like, well, you need a job. So when his buddies did construction, and he wheeled and stuff, so I knew him. And he's like, Jeff needs help building this house in Rancho Marietta.
Perfect.
He'll pick you up. He lived up the street. He goes, I'll pick you up and drop you off. So for an entire summer, I got picked up at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I got dropped off at 7:30 at night.
Wow.
And I did it. I built one house with him, and I go, you know what? I don't like building houses. This is fun.
I don't like working with wood.
And I had known Dylan from buying parts and all that kind of stuff. So I'd always told him, like, hey, if you wanted to... I worked at a body shop that was in the same complex as him before this.
Okay.
And I go, hey, if you ever, need a younger kid that wants to learn, let me know. So he called me up, and I took a pay cut to go work for him, but it was something I wanted to do.
Sure.
So it was kind of worth it. And I was there for 5 years and built all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, like I said, full tube chassis buggies, front half and back half in Toyotas, turning Jeeps into buggies. I mean, everything.
That's cool.
Under the sun. So that's where I got my...
Cut your teeth and really...
And then it got to a certain point, in any job where people start butting heads, and he and I became good friends, and it's like, okay. I mean, we would go wheeling on the weekends together. We'd go fishing together.
Yeah.
We did family stuff together. It got to the point where it's like, all right, I need to go find something else to do. So I was working for Parts Mike.
Oh, Parts Mike, yeah.
When Bill and JoJo Spaeth owned it.
Yeah.
Because I was... Bill had found out I left Dylan's. Bill called me and said, hey, I think Jeremy had left at that point. It was just Kevin. He goes, we need a sales guy. He goes, I know you're not a sales guy, but you're personable. You can talk to people. He goes, you want to come work for me? I'm like, sure. It was in Auburn. And I was there about 3 months. And that's when they were selling it to Mike Cunningham. And I'm like, I'd heard some stuff about him. I wasn't sure if I wanted to work for him or not. And, it got weird.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to go with the company when the company leaves. So I was working at the Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
Before we owned it. I was working there, and I was doing some other stuff on the side. And we came up here for Oktoberfest, for the Zombies Oktoberfest.
Okay. Yeah.
And we wheeled in, and I was with a couple of the WFO guys and a group of my friends, and it started raining. And it started, raining. And
Sierra rainstorm.
It was cold, and I'm like, everybody's like, oh, man. I'm like, well, I'm going to go back to my cabin if you guys want to come hang out at the cabin with me. We only got 3 bedrooms, but you guys are welcome to do whatever you want.
We got a bunch of dry space. Yeah.
So
dry floor.
We all came, hung out there. Trevor showed up. We partied for the evening. And then...
Does he like to party? I couldn't tell.
I mean...
A little bit?
I'll tell you the story how I met him in a minute. The first time I hung out with him. So he called me Tuesday at 10 o'clock at night. So my good friend Thomas texted me, said, hey, Kevin Kirkard is looking for your number. And
okay.
I figured we had just gone wheeling together. You wanted to hook up. And then I don't know, an hour later, Trevor calls me. He's like, hey, what are you doing for work, blah, blah. And I told him, he goes, well, I want you to come do sales for me. And I'm like, I like building stuff. I don't want to do sales. He goes, well, just come down and talk to me. And I ended up being there for 5 years. And when I left, I was the sales manager, the service manager.
Okay.
But it was kind of the same thing. I was ready to... I treated his company as my own. That's just kind of the person I am. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I may as well try and do it for myself.
Right.
And then be able to do the Christmas... We had bought the Christmas tree farm at that point. So it became hard to take time off from him to do Christmas trees.
To do the Christmas tree farm, yeah.
I ended up basically from October 1st till Christmas working 7 days a week.
Sure.
And I got to the point where it's like, I don't want to do this every year.
Yeah.
So, I love working for Trevor. I would go, if stuff worked out, I would go back and work for Trevor again.
Sure.
He's just one of those guys that, he's a partier. He could be a little dumb, but he takes good care of his guys.
Yeah.
So it's one of those big heart, and it's you feel he's got the family atmosphere.
Exactly. And that's key. You just don't see that a lot anymore. In our industry, we do, in the off-road industry. Yeah. There's a lot of, you hear that a lot. All the employees like, oh, I love working there. It's like family environment and cool and, all that stuff. But yeah. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And then, you're a young gun, so you're like, hey, I want to give this a shot.
Yeah, and I started doing, I knew I wanted to do fabrication, but it didn't have to be off-road stuff. So I've kind of dipped my toes in doing, there's a logging company that's in the same parking lot I am. So I do some stuff for them, fixing tractor buckets. It's anything metal working.
Yeah, absolutely.
And working for myself, I've gotten very spoiled. As you know.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, we got a trip coming up, so I'm going to work the 3 weeks straight for
crazy
12 hours a day.
Get this done.
Yep. And then we're going to go play for a week. So I don't have to worry about anybody telling me no.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, that's for sure, and you got to love what you do because it will wear you down. And there's some nights where you're like, how am I making this power bill? How's this happening? You know, and stuff. But the trade off, like you just said, is you can manage your time how you want and work it to your advantage, so you get to play and enjoy life and do that, work-life balance thing.
Yep.
So it's cool, and it's like I was telling the story the other day. I had a member at the country club, and I was, thinking about doing my own thing and stuff. And he goes, Jason, it's not for everybody, but he goes, I know you can do it. He goes, you have that mindset. And I go, well, I appreciate that. It gave me the confidence to do it because, you always self-doubt and like, well, what if this, what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You got to.
Exactly. My wife was my biggest supporter.
Yeah.
So I would come home from work. And this was before we were married. I'd come home from work. I'd be stressed out and pissed off about something else. My cell phone would ring.
Sure.
It was a customer ball. She's like, why are you doing this for somebody else when you could do it for yourself?
Right.
And she was like, I'm like, well, I made, decent money working for Trevor, so there was never an issue money. I'm like, well, if I go work for myself, I don't know what's going to happen.
You don't know.
And when I started, I didn't have a shop.
Right.
I lived in a fifth wheel at the Christmas tree farm with no power.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, Dad, can I use your 2-car garage?
Right.
So I worked out of there for almost a year, and in his 2-car garage at his house, he's probably had 15 or 20 Toyota solid axles done.
Really?
I have probably front half 3 vehicles in there, exo cages in the driveway, full Jeep builds on 1-tons. And then I got to the point where my mom's like, hey, I'm tired of you showing up at 6:30 every morning and leaving at 9 o'clock at night. You need to figure something out.
Right.
So that's when I got my shop in town.
Okay.
It's kind of a cool, so Forest Hills used to be a logging community.
Yeah.
I am in one of the old mill buildings.
Cool.
That was built in 1940.
Oh, wow.
It's 30 by 40 workable space with the offices in the back. Wood stove in the corner because
Nice.
obviously it snows up there.
Oh, yeah.
It's $1,500 a month.
Can't beat that.
It's in town.
Yeah.
It's got 3-phase power because it's one of the old mill buildings.
That's awesome.
So, the guy that owns the building runs the automotive shop out of the other half. So I have a full tire machine, balancer, alignment rack to go use whenever I want.
That's cool.
He usually charges me a case of beer.
Sure.
I needed tires on my Dodge before we came up, and I had the camper on it already. He goes, oh, bring it over. So I walked over a 12-pack of Sierra Nevada, and he's like, okay, I'll do your tires for you. Perfect.
He keeps there. Oh, that's great. That sounds ideal.
And I've been doing my own thing now. I guess March was 3 years.
3 years.
That I worked for myself.
Wow, already,
and I'm
man.
still making it.
Red Wet Willy Fab.
Red Wet Willy
Let's get
Fab.
that out there.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear, and that's
It was cool when I left WFO. Like I told Trevor I was going to do.
Right.
I'm not directly competing with him, but I am.
But there's that old saying, when the tide rises, all the boats come up, and it's like, and competition is a good thing, and not that you're directly in competition, but it's. I mean, you left on good terms. You guys still have a great relationship. It wasn't like "F you, I'm out of here" type of deal, right? Let's make that clear.
I gave him a month and a half notice.
Yep.
I hired a new guy.
Trained
I
him.
helped him hire a new guy. I trained the new guy. I gave the new guy my cell phone number because I was handling. I had 5 techs underneath me. We were doing, $60,000, $80,000 builds that sometimes take 3 or 4 months to get the parts. So I was in the middle of a bunch of stuff. I still buy the majority of all my parts from WFO.
Perfect.
It's convenient.
Sure.
Kevin lives in Forest Hill, so I pay for him. He brings them home for
and
me.
he gets some free delivery.
Exactly. Alan does all my gear and axle work.
Okay.
The stuff I don't do myself. And I don't like working on JKs or JLs.
Right.
Because they're too new and too fancy for me. I have one I work on for one customer. But other than that, I tell them, anybody that needs a lift kit, they want to put JLs or JL 1-ton, something like that. It's like, call WFO, talk to Trevor. He's the guy to do it. And then he gets hardcore fab work that he doesn't want to do. And he's like, okay, take it to
vice
Danny.
versa.
Exactly.
So that's great. And I suspected that was happening, but I'm glad you said that because that's super cool.
He did send me one the other day I got to do on Monday that he's like, oh, my buddy's got a 4-wheel drive converted van that he needs a set of Devers put in.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. I don't really want to do it, but it's Trevor's buddy. Just sure.
Help him out.
Well, the guy sends me a picture. It's a 4-wheel drive converted motorhome van. Like it's a van, but it has the big bubble top.
Wow.
So I'm like, that thing won't even fit in the bay door. I talked to him. I'm like, whatever, I'll do it for you. He sends these leaf springs in. Jason, I don't think I can pick the leaf spring up by myself.
Devers are crazy, man.
They're like the pack's like 3 or 4 inches thick.
Oh my gosh.
So I didn't tell him yesterday when Trevor was here. I was like, hey, thanks for this one, bud.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Take photos and send it to him
exactly.
with a couple funny emojis.
Tag him on Instagram. Thanks, Trevor. But no, so that was one thing. Is
van life.
My dad always taught me, it's like, you don't burn the bridge.
No.
Because you never know if you're going to have to go back across it or if it's going to come back across to you.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it is. The relationships, especially in this business or our off-road community, word travels fast, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody gets screwed over, it's like, well, you're kind of tainted, you know?
Exactly.
And but that's rare. That's rare. We got a really good group of people. Yeah. And it's a strong community, and you know, get your name out there and stuff, and people are like, yeah, did you know Forest Hill, Wet Willy Fab's doing all this stuff? Oh, well, sweet. Okay, I'm going to go look him up. I'm right down the street. So
it's funny. I've had some customers, friends that have followed me from WFO to my own thing, and I had a Land Cruiser I threw the front of.
Okay.
And Trevor had done a walk around. They did the anniversary car show in the parking lot a year ago.
Okay.
And it was there, and Trevor did a walk around video and was talking all about, our WFO thrilling kit, all this stuff. I texted him that, and I'm like, hey, I linked the front of that, right? He's like, you did? He's like, it looked like we did. I'm like, well, it's all your parts.
Right.
So it's funny. Like, I'll build stuff that still looks like WFO built it.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
So what I was getting at, I mean, word of mouth, that's where you're getting your business?
Instagram, Facebook, word of mouth.
Okay.
That's pretty much, wheeling all the time. I do a lot of recoveries too.
Yeah.
So the recoveries are good because it helps me meet people I'm not going to normally meet.
Sure.
They're in a bad way. I get to help them get out of the trail.
Right.
To make a couple bucks. The recoveries, it's kind of a wash. By the time I spend the day up there, it's more or less I get to go wheeling.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good excuse to get out of the shop and get tires on rocks.
But you help that person. And it's like, oh, this guy's really nice. So that's how I get a lot of my stuff. A lot of my stuff comes from WFO too.
Yeah, that's cool.
So the stuff they don't want to do
Right.
And there's still stuff I don't like working on Cherokees. They don't have a soul.
I was going to say because they don't have a soul.
Yep. They don't have a soul. I got one I work on for one guy. And the only reason I work on it for him is it's on tons. It's on 40s. It's tubed out. It's like, it's not really a Cherokee anymore, so I'll work on his. But other than that, it's like, I don't want to work on those things.
Right. That's funny.
The guys go, will you weld frame sniffers on for me? It's like, no.
There's no frame to weld.
Yeah, no. I got to pull the carpet. No.
No.
That's another thing. I get picky on what I do, too.
Well, and you earn that right.
Yeah.
And it's your shop, so you can do whatever the hell you want. That's the benefit of it. But you can't turn away everything, right?
No, exactly. There's stuff I do that I don't really want to that's good work.
Yeah.
But there's stuff it's like, if I don't see a good outcome at the end, I'm not going to do it for a guy.
Right.
It's like, I'm not going to build something
You don't want to half-ass and then, who did that? Oh, well, that was, Danny and River. No, you want it's your reputation out there on the trail.
I'm doing a Willys pickup right now for a guy. The guy was building the whole thing himself, and it's kind of his first, off-road big build like that. And he called me. He had another shop. They didn't want to do it. He called me. They wanted to build a whole new frame for it. And he's like, I don't want to go that far. He called me up. I'm like, bring it by. Let me look at it. It was 3-length in the front, 350 Chevy with a sniper on it, turbo 350 Atlas. Nothing crazy. He built it all himself with WFO parts, and I had sold him parts when I worked at WFO. And kind of talked to him about mine, what I did, and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, and we kind of talked to, how long it was going to take. And I'm like, all right, drop it off. I started by mounting the cab. That's how far backwards it ran. And I had to go that far backwards.
Really?
I moved motor and tranny up 6 inches and back 3. I got all that stuff done. I started looking at I have a high school kid that works for me, and he does all my plasma cutting and grinding.
Oh, cool.
So I don't have to do the bitch work.
Right.
I got it all cleaned off, and I'm looking at it. The frame was 3 inches out of square, which isn't. I get fixture stuff to fix it.
Sure.
I started looking at it, and I called him. I go, hey, man. I go, by the time I square this thing, grind all, weld all the plasma cutting gouges up in the frame, remount your steering box. I'm like, can I just cut the front of the frame off and start over? And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't think it's going to take me any longer to cut the front of the frame. I was going to do it out of box tubing, so nothing crazy. I'm like, I don't think it's going to take me more time than this to do that. And he's like, well, he goes, let me think about it. And he showed up the next morning. We were looking at it together. He goes, yeah, he goes, I never thought somebody would call me and tell me, something's either going to take them the same time or less time and make less money than to do it the long way. It's like, well, the money part's the money part. I just want it to be nice when it's done.
I want it to work. Yeah.
I had another guy, one of my good friends that I wheel with all the time. He wheeled a Ford Ranger for a long time.
Ford fucking Ranger.
A Ford fucking Ranger, and it was his high school truck.
Okay.
Last year, Sierra Trek, it was 44 9-inch radius star in front. It was on 40s. Last year, it broke axle shaft. On 4, it ate a valve, so the motor was junk. So he had started collecting all the parts. We were going to do 5.3 4500 Atlas tons. He's got a wife and 2 daughters. They want to go wheeling, so we are going to make it into a 400 buggy kind of back seat thing.
That's cool.
And we started talking, and he had a 70 Datsun pickup sitting there. I'm like, well, pre-smog, he has the title for it. I go, then you can put a motor in the Ranger and keep the Ranger the way it is.
Yeah.
So we started talking about that. He collected all the parts. He had everything. And we were going to start on, I was going to just do the fab work for him. He's a ASE master tech. So he's, mechanic-wise, he's dialed.
Sure.
Fabrication, not so much. Yeah. So when I need, like, my wife's 400 needed timing belt. He did timing belt, water pump for me, that kind of stuff.
You do that.
So we were going to build him basically a chassis out of this Datsun pickup. And we started talking about it, and we were talking money. I'm like, okay, it's going to be about this much. And all of a sudden, this rig popped up that I had built at Off-Road Addiction, full tube chassis buggy. 5.3, 465, 205, linked front and rear for 20 grand.
Wow.
And I go to him, I'm like, man, I'm going to talk myself out about $25,000 in this conversation. So listen, he goes, okay. I go, you have all these parts. He goes, yeah, I go. And you have a couple vehicles. I go, sell all that stuff, get the cash, go buy this buggy, and you can go wheeling this year. So that was in June. He came up to Sierra Trek, wheeled it all week. We had to put a winch on the front of it and some other,
Okay.
As when you buy a used buggy, you're always doing something to it. But he's like, I never thought I would have a friend that would talk me out of spending, $25,000 with him to go buy a buggy to go wheeling together. I'm like, man, it's not.
Yeah.
Money at the end of the day is not everything. I just like wheeling and having fun.
Yeah, exactly. And you're fair, you're honest, you're like, dude, this is going to work way better.
And this winter, it's got the 465 205 in it, which, I'm sure you've shifted to 465. They're not fun. Mm-mm. The 205 is not quite low enough, so he still has an MV 4500 and Atlas from the other build. So like this winter, we'll put that in. I'm like, he kind of felt bad. I'm like, well, this winter, you can pay me. We'll put this in together. I'll redo the floor for you, so I'll still make something out of you.
There you go. That's cool. That's cool.
He's the same kind of buddy that I can call him at 3 o'clock and he's getting off work and like, hey, can you come by the shop and give me a hand for a couple hours, doing this, doing that. So
nice. That's cool. Yeah. That's a great relationship. Hey, so let's talk about where your Red Willy's at right now. What's under it? Because it's ever evolving. It seems
so
like break shit and it gets upgraded, and break more shit and it gets upgraded. So
it's currently 5.3.
Okay.
MV 4500. I'm a big manual guy.
Yeah, you like the stick.
Yeah. Atlas transfer case, 4-linked front, 14-inch coilovers, Chevy 60, factory disc brake, 14 bolt in the rear.
Okay.
Leaf spring, Chevy 63 springs. From the firewall back, it's stock frame that's been plated and boxed over the years. But yeah, this last season or beginning of the season, we went to Hammers. I've been running the same axle shafts for 8 years, Yukons.
Really?
I broke one 2 years ago. We went down for a week at Hammers. We ran every trail we wanted to run. It was like second to last night. Tyler from WFO showed up. He had just gotten there. He's like, will you go run turkey call with me? I'm like, sure, man.
Yeah.
It's dark. I'm like,
sure.
All right. I was in the camper, like had eaten dinner, sitting there with the cocktails, ready to go to bed,
Yeah.
It's like, I just got here. We go wheeling. It's like, let's go. Yeah, I'll go run turkey call. And we camp over there.
Sure.
Like, we'll go run it.
Sure.
So I got in there. There was a Jeep stuck on the right line.
Okay.
So I was going to go left. So I backed up, and I backed into a rock. And I was just backing up and was kind of turning. And boom. I'm like, oh, okay, axle shaft. It broke. They were, like I said, 8-10 years ago. So I drove back to camp.
Well used.
But not even mad at them all. So I took it apart. Stub shaft, passenger side was broken. Inner shaft, passenger side was twisted. Driver's side, driver's side shaft was twisted. Inner stub shafts, they were all junk. So Put all new shafts in it, and I was being cheap and put Spicer U-joints in it and didn't put the super joints back in.
Okay.
Went to the Hammers and, wheeled all season. Went to the Hammers. We ran a bunch of stuff, and we were going to go heckle at Chocolate Thunder.
Uh-huh.
And my deal is if I'm going to heckle somebody, I have to at least do it first. I'm like, we got to run me and one of my buddies, I'm like, we got to run it first, and then we can heckle.
Yeah.
I got in there, and I hopped once, blew the U-joint up, passenger side front.
Oh, jeez.
Drove it out broken, broke the reed knuckle, cracked the reed knuckle.
Oh, jeez.
So like, okay, so we went back to camp. Next day, woke up, took it all apart. My Premier welder had broke, so I didn't have my welder. There was a guy down there, and I wish I remember his company name. He was right by the 40.
Okay.
He was set up, ADS and him were right next to each other. We go out there, and he goes, okay. He goes, well, I got torches. I can fix it all. So he grooved it, spot drilled the crack. It just cracked. So
okay.
Drilled it, welded it, overlaid it, preheated it, let it cool overnight. Charged me like $150.
No shit.
I'm still running it.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I love those trail fixes.
So all that stuff happened. Put it all back together. We got that night. We ran. We went up sledge, down jack, blue dot, one of those other ones right there, and we were going up jack north. And I hung the rear diff up, and the truck was stuck. I'm like, okay, I already broke it once. I'm going to be nice.
Sure.
Pull cable. I got out, hooked the winch up, and my buddy came walking back down, and I'm winching, and the truck, it was unstuck at this point. And as soon as the cable goes slack, boom, other side U-joint.
What?
It had been, I think it fatigued.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
We've been down there for like 6 days at this point. I'm like, I'm good. I got enough wheeling in. We're going to go hang out in Hammertown tomorrow and get food and just chill.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Came home, where I'm at, it snows a lot. I have an old timer that I take care of he's got 3 miles of non-plowed road to get to his house.
Wow.
And it'll snow 5 or 6 feet. So he winters there. So I drive the crawler in and out and bring him groceries and stuff.
Cool.
And I needed to go check on him. So I put another axle shaft in the front. My wife was driving her 400. I was driving the Willys. And I went to go spin a donut in 2-wheel drive in the snow and broke a 14-bolt chromoly shaft. Nice. So I'm like, okay, this thing needs. So it went to the shop. I got new Yukon chromolys for the back. While we were at Hammers, I broke the second shaft. I was pissed.
Yeah.
And I started pricing it out. And I'm like, by the time I buy new super joints and all the stuff, I'm going to be $1,800. And then I'm like, well, let's go talk to RCV. So we went over to their RCV booth. My buddy had bought his down there the year before. And I go, what's the deal? He goes, what is it? GM60, blah, blah, blah. Non-300M because I'm not that fancy. I go, what's the price? He goes, well, $1,000 off, free shipping, no tax. It was like $2,200 shipped to the shop.
Oh.
And I'm like, done.
All right.
So, and they showed up like 3 or 4 days after
Hammers.
Really? Yep.
The stock part. Yeah.
So, took the truck apart. The C on the passenger side, when the shaft came apart, it just boogered up where the bearing rides.
Okay.
The driver's side C had the kingpin welded in about 5 seasons before because it's stripped out. It's like, okay, it's time to put C's on this thing. It was already trussed and linked, so cut the corners of the trucks off. Cut the lower link mounts off. I was going to have Alan at WFO help me, but he was busy. I'd never put C's on by myself.
Okay.
And I'm like, preheat, caster, all stuff. So I jigged the whole thing up on my axle rack, tackled it all in place, measured everything, took pictures with the angle finder so I could remember which was which.
Oh, good.
Fired up the wood stove. Took 1 foot by 1 foot by like 2-inch thick concrete pavers.
Okay.
Built a kiln on top of my wood stove in the shop. Put 1 C in there for about 2 hours. Got a good hot fire. Went to test fit it. Didn't fit. Put it back in there for like another hour. I'm like, okay, next one we're gonna do 3 hours right off the gate. Slid them both on. Finish welded them. Put it all back together.
No shit.
Still in there. So
that's awesome.
I did a video of it. It's on Instagram. And
Okay.
people are like, you fucking hillbilly.
Hey.
I'm like, Alan does them with a toaster oven. I can do it on my wood stove.
Exactly. That's even better. That's awesome, man. Yeah. Hey, that's how you learn. That's how you figure shit out.
Yeah.
Especially when it's your own rig. It's okay.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when I had done a bunch of stuff at Off-Road Addiction. When I went to go do the front of my truck, I'd never done it by myself, front halved it. So it's like, okay, let's figure this out. And since then, I've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 different front. Did my dad's CJ. He had the 44 in the front, the Wagoneer 44 that was in my Willys originally. came out and went in the front of his CJ.
Okay.
We had linked the back. It was on leaf springs. The 44, I had put so many sets of ball joints in the 44, it needed new knuckles, and it had a C that kind of was starting to collapse. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you need a 60. So, got a Dodge 60. I still worked at WFO. Got a Dodge 60. Alan and I cut the long side down to make it like 64 or 65-inch wheel mount. 27.5-inch spring perch width, so it'd go in on where the leaf springs were. We didn't have to do too much stuff. Just trying to get a 60 in the front, get rid of the 44. So, brought it home, and his frame had... to 64 CJ5. So the frame had broken various places over the years and been plated. So I was like, I'm going to do one big frame plate on it, make it nice, remount the shocks, kind of clean it up. I started grinding the frame down, and it's cracked here. It's broken here. The cross member's falling out here. I'm like,
yeah. Here we
he
go.
comes out. I go, hey, this thing's pretty bad. He's like, well, I don't want to cut the frame. He's the diehard old Jeep guy. I don't want to cut my Jeep up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, fine. So it sat in the garage for like 3 or 4 days. And he calls me. He's like, come over tonight. We need to talk. All right. So I go over there. We're drinking a beer. And he's like, well, how long do you think it's going to... I'm like, you saw me. It took a year to do my truck. And he's like, It's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, going to cut it off with a firewall. And
here we go.
So he now has a CJ5 that's got 102 inches of wheelbase.
Yeah, perfect.
It's 4-linked in the front. And it's still on 37s. It still has fenders. And he had the short fenders on it.
Uh-huh.
So we put the long fenders on it at the same time, got the longer hood, so you get a bigger radiator in it. And he's like, I don't know why I ever doubted you. This thing's so much fun to drive. And then
That's cool.
we were going to build him a Willys pickup. I got with TDK, Throttle Done Customs, and they were going to build me a Willys pickup frame rails.
Okay.
And I was going to do 5.3, 4500 Atlas, typical 1 tons, 37s. He wanted something hot rod. He's never had a hot rod. He's always had Jeeps.
Okay.
So he wanted a hot rod, but that he could still go, do easy stuff, go overlanding, kind of air conditioning, snow runs.
Yeah, comfortable.
So we started messing around with that, and I had it all on the chassis table, was getting ready to order. I had the frame all drawn, was ready to pull the trigger, and he's like, I don't want to build it. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like 2-3 weeks later, he calls me. He goes, guess what I just bought? I'm like, what'd you just buy? He goes, I bought a LJ. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
All right. We had 60, a 14 bolt. We had coilovers.
You had everything.
I see where this is going.
Uh-huh.
He found 05 LJ, original owner. The old guy couldn't get in and out of it anymore. It still has the bumperettes on the front of it. It has the factory hella lights on it. I mean, completely bone stock. $13,000.
Oh, gosh. You got to be kidding me.
Rubicon model. So he's like, well, this already has air conditioning.
Yeah.
It has defrosters.
Sure.
Hard top, hard doors. I'm like, we could put axles underneath that thing and be
Send
wheeling
it.
by hammers.
That's awesome.
So that's going to be his.
So that's the new project.
Yeah. His CJ, it's on 37s. He doesn't want to make it any bigger, but he wants 40s.
Right.
So he doesn't want a buggy because he's like, well, I'm getting old. I want to be comfortable.
We like our creature comforts as we get older. Yeah.
I'm sure you have seat heaters.
I have a seat heater in the buggy.
Just on the driver's side?
Just on the driver's side where it counts. Passenger fend for yourself, man.
Do you have a heater or anything in it?
No. And all the engine heat's behind me, right? Because the engine's behind me, which is great in the summertime.
Yeah. But
you go out here and it's freaking awesome, but it ain't the winter rig. I'll tell you that right now. You put on a snowmobile suit.
Yep.
It's like a snowball fight driving the thing, because it is buggy and the tires are freaking
do you
huge.
have open floors where you can see through to the tires and everything?
Yeah, floor's aluminum, but then, the panels on the side I take off, and then you can see, the passenger front, obviously driver. So it's great. Great summer rig. And
wintertime, not so much.
Wintertime, not so much.
Hammers, I'm sure, can be rough depending on the weather.
Well, again, the seat heater works wonders.
Okay.
It really, and then, I like cold weather. I love snow, cold weather, so I dress appropriately for it.
Well, we never got hooked up, but you were in the backcountry snowmobiling too.
Oh, yeah. So, and I love snowmobiling out here at, Meadow Lake. The terrain out here is insane in the wintertime and really tough.
Yep.
And you're, not to mention 14 miles from the nearest road.
Anything.
Yeah, and like if shit goes south, you better have some snowshoes or something. Or
So we rode one day, we unloaded LTS.
Uh-huh.
And rode all the way in here. And then rode, it was spring snow. You were actually up here, right?
Okay.
That was like a couple weeks later. We went wheeling together, and it's like, oh, I heard you.
that's
running
right.
around. I heard
That's
you.
right. Yeah.
We rode all the way as far as we could till we ran out of snow at the top of Old Man Mountain.
Yeah. Shit.
And hung out there, had lunch. And it's cool now because it's like I can look at Old Man Mountain when we're rock crawling and be like, oh, I've been up there.
Well,
People are like,
and that, and like when you're coming up Highway 80, you're like, and I've hiked up to the Old Man. I haven't ridden the snowmobile up there, but you're like, oh, yep, there it
been up
is.
there,
I know that, and Meadow Lake's just on the other side. Yeah.
So that's for like somebody like you and I that grew up wheeling.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing with wheeling is, staying on the trail.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping trails open.
Yep.
The snowmobiling, you go where you want.
Yeah, I want to
Where
go
you
there.
want.
Okay.
And you go there.
You're over snow. Yeah, there's no trail.
Uh-huh. I mean, there's some stuff, Castle Peak has the boundaries and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's wherever you want to go.
Yep.
And that's the most addicting part for me.
And you can get places, I mean, in the wintertime, you can get to Meadow Lake so quick.
Yeah.
You can get up to the top of Lacey Peak so quick because
Well,
you don't have to take a trail.
Forest Hill, at the end of Forest Hill
yeah.
Road, there's China Wall, and they groom all the way up to Robinson Flat, basically.
I've only went out there once, and it was a few years ago. My buddy had problems with a sled, so we didn't make it very far. But I want to go back out there and explore that area.
The thing up there is it has to be a good winter because the parking lot at China Wall is like 5,000 feet.
Yeah, it's low.
And so you got to ride a lot of groom to get up into a good zone to ride.
Yeah.
Bowman Lakes, though.
Yeah.
Right now, Bowman Lakes is a good time.
That's a good
because
one.
you're up real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
But,
good stuff.
Yeah.
Man, right on. Covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Love finally getting this podcast on there. And I know people are going to enjoy the story. A lot of people know you, have seen you out on the trail. You've got the distinctive red, pretty pristine. I didn't want to say Raisin Dove because it's not a Toyota, but it's a well used, well loved. You put on quite the show all the time. You're not afraid to send it. There's that video. I got to go back and watch that. But seeing you yesterday, it reminded me of the video at WFO when
behind
you were
the shop,
buzzing around the shop. And what shit the bed? You broke a transfer case or
adapter.
The adapter
4500 and the Atlas broke.
Yeah, you had oil just pouring out of this thing, and I'm like, oh, that's classic Danny.
I carry one of those adapters in the tow rig now.
Do you really?
Well, it was $60 for a new one, so I bought two.
Okay.
And I bought a cast steel one instead of aluminum one.
Okay.
And I'm like, you know what? It's just one of those things that just lives in the tow rig. If it ever happens again,
you probably never need it again, but it's there.
I have it.
Okay, that's
it's
good.
just the peace of mind of having it.
But you have the distinctive truck out on the trail. I mean, I've only seen a handful of other wheelies over the years on the trail wheeling, and so real easy to find Danny out there.
Yep.
So how do they get a hold of you on the socials and stuff?
Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, it's Red Wet Willy Fab.
Red Wet Willy Fab.
Okay.
Yep. And then if you see the truck, the phone number's on the side of it.
There you go.
So
hey, look at this shop
makes it
truck.
easy there. Yep. Tax write-off sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
My accountant's like, how come you had to spend $8,000 after this trip you went to advertise at?
Yeah,
well,
yeah. Well, that's axles aren't cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's awesome, man. I'm glad to call you a friend, and it's always good to see you out on the trail, see your dad and everybody out there. So
I got one trip. We're not going to talk about where we're going here, but when we're done, we'll talk about where we're going to go.
Okay.
I'm going to invite you on.
All right.
We do our anniversary trip every year.
Nice.
We go to this place. We have the biggest group we ever had was 14 of us. When we woke up Sunday morning, 7 of the 14 were broken.
Oh boy.
And we had to drag them out.
All right.
I'm talking everything from blown up clutches to people going over backwards to broken ring and pinions. So I want to get you into this place and we'll go wheeling together.
Sounds great. Right on. Well, that's good, man. Well, hey, best of luck with your business. You need some fab work, and you're near the Forest Hill area or anywhere in Northern California. Really, Forest Hill's pretty quick to get to from
We're right outside of Auburn.
Yeah, right outside of Auburn. Yep. People know where Auburn is for sure in NorCal, and as you heard, Danny could pretty much do any fab work that you need. If he needs help from his mechanic friends, he's got good resources. So, and that's key.
And if you need a Christmas tree, we do Christmas trees in the winter.
There you go, and we'll throw a Christmas tree in the back of the truck on the way down the hill for you.
We'll have to do another one in a little bit. We'll talk about the Christmas tree side of it.
And that was one of the podcasts we want to do is from the Christmas tree farm.
Yeah, we'll make that work this year. We'll actually sit there at the farm and look over the Crystal Beat Basin. And
let's do it. Yeah, let's do it before things get busy around Christmas time for you guys.
Before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so let's. Here's the deal. So I'm going to Trail Hero at the beginning of October. So let's do it sometime End of October, beginning of November.
Perfect.
Okay, sounds like
good.
a plan. May or may not have to have some whiskey up there. Or
Definitely.
something. I don't know.
Definitely.
We'll see. Right on, Danny. Well, appreciate your time. Great story. Looking forward to wheeling with you in the future. And yeah.
I wish I was staying up here the rest of the week with you.
Well,
We've been up here since Tuesday.
I was going to say,
the wife's ready to go home.
You loaded on the front end. We're loading on the back end.
We may do the opposite next year.
But yeah, you should. It's just nice. It's good. Well, this camp's opening up already. A lot of people are hitting the road out, and but another beautiful day in paradise up here. So, right on, man. Thanks a lot. Enjoyed it, and with that, we're out. So there you go, Chris. There's Danny's story in a almost 1 hour podcast.
Cutting metal and making shit happen. That's awesome.
He is. He's fabricating. I mean, he talks about front halfing a bunch of rigs, links and coilovers, and back halfing, and he worked at WFO there with Trevor, and he left on good terms. Which is always good. Don't want burning bridges and stuff. But he told Trevor, "Hey, I want to do this on my own."
Yeah, learn from the best, and then go out and branch out and put your twist to it, right?
Exactly. And so he's making a name for himself. Definitely backs up what he puts out there. He puts his equipment to the full test.
Yes, he does.
Which is always fun to see. And he goes out and does trail repairs. So
all right. No, he's busy all weekend long and all the time.
Yeah. So if you have a major break on the trail and you need someone that has fabrication skills to put your junk back together, as Shannon Campbell says, he's a great guy to call. Red Wet Willy Fab there. So
who are you gonna call?
Yeah, and and you will see him and his dad out there wheeling all the time on Fordyce and Rubicon, Barrett. Any of the trails, and then down at the Hammers. They're down there camping with us at the Hammers and stuff.
That's right.
and running trails day and night.
I don't know when they sleep. I think they sleep in shifts.
He's young. He's young.
He
can still do that stuff.
Can't keep up with that shit.
I got like one night run a week in me.
Night run.
Yeah. So great operation Danny's got going there. Recently married and living life and making it happen. So
that's great. I'm super happy for him, and hopefully the listeners enjoy this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad finally got this one in the can and getting it out there to the listeners of the podcast, Wheelie Wine and Whiskey Podcast. So thanks, Danny, for your time.
Because we give till it hurts.
That's right. We give till it hurts here. That's right. Don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. And Toyotas suck.
That's right. So I'll include in the show notes links to Danny's email and phone number, and his business phone number, not his personal cell phone number. And if you have any interest in getting work done on your rig, reach out to Danny, and he'll make it happen if he can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want to reach out to Wheeling Wine Whiskey, you can get a hold of us by calling that fucking awesome phone number, 408-800-5169.
It's a fucking awesome phone number.
408-800-5169. Call, leave a message, and we'll play it on the air.
That's right.
And you can also leave emails with us, Chris at wheelingwinewhiskey.com or Jason at wheelingwinewhiskey.com. And Lorenzo, he actually got an email. We'll post that.
Oh, he did.
We'll talk about that in the next episode.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
And then you can all go to our website, www.wheelingwinewhiskey.com, where you can see all of our past episodes and, of course, links to our merch and so forth and so on. And last but not least, what's the other thing? The IG, right?
Oh, the IG. Yeah, Wheeling Wine and Whiskey on the IG. And, we got some videos out during Trek. So, and hopefully you got to see those. So, anyways, I'm really making an effort to try and post more. Lorenzo has been holding me back,
Got to get back in the saddle.
Got to get back in the saddle. Back in the saddle again. All right. And with that,
we're out.